All right, SuperCoach, strap in. Welcome to the official AFL SuperCoach podcast, your in and out guide to the greatest game on this big blue marble we call the planet Earth. That's right, AFL SuperCoach. Round 17 is in the bag. Round 18 is ahead to preview. I'm your host, Jaymz Clements. Joining me is the guru, Al Paton today. What's going on, Al?
G'day, James. Yeah, it was an interesting weekend. We've used all these trades and we've somehow really been pretty lucky up until this point in the season. We haven't had a heap of injuries or suspensions and things to deal with, and of course they all arrive in one hit when our trades are nearly all gone. So will be some interesting strategy about how we manage that this week.
We poked the eye of the SuperCoach gods, and here we are. We're about to pay for it, I reckon. We also have a really great guest on today as well, following on from last week where we had Nat, the number one ranked SuperCoacher. We've got the YouTube legend himself, SuperCoach with DR. DR jumps on the show, ranked 602 at the moment. It's a great chat with him, so stick around for that. And of course, this show is always brought to you by SuperCoach Plus. You can follow that for live SuperCoach scores on game day. Check out all the break-evens, all the projected scores. All the good stuff right there. Check the show, the show description for the links there. But let's start this show the way we start every show, Al. Round 17 wrap. Heroes and villains. Now, I know you've got a couple of thoughts. I'll be very brief. I'm just going to tee this one up for you, just like the old alley-oop, off you go. Easily for me, 23-12, a bit of an underwhelming week. Basically, I don't know. I feel like this is very, very similar across the board for a lot of super coaches. We had some dizzying highs and some meaty lows. Because I reckon all of my primos were all the massive ones, 130 plus. Everybody else was 80. You're like, what is going on here? So my heroes, very clearly, I'll tell you what, Zach Butters. I love him. 159, he rips that off. Really, really helped. But Sheasel just sticking around very, very nice as well. Rips off the 141. Yeah. And my villain, and basically the villain of my heart from a tough weekend as a Blues supporter, Charlie Curnow. See, Harry Mackay. I love Harry Mackay. AFL today, he's referred to as Harry McFive. He kicked 5, Al. It's happened twice this year. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Charlie goes completely MIA against the GWS Giants. 33 points. Absolute Barry Crocker shocker. He and Clary Oliver really just bottom floor for me. So easily my villains. Tough one though. How about yourself?
Yes, well, I scored 23-24, so just pipped you. My ranking slipped backwards about 100 spots, now 279 overall, which is still pretty good. So, I mean, to me, that just shows the value of banking points early in the season so you can survive when you have a bit of a shocker, like I feel like I did on the weekend. My hero quickly, my hero really is the Phantom because he's coming from the clouds, had a massive score on the weekend, and on Friday night, he just threw something in the group chat about Collingwood and how they give up points to midfielders. And Zach Merritt, even though he let us down last week, could be a good sneaky tip for a VC this week. So I changed that from Dacos to Merritt just before the game started, and that worked out fantastically, especially considering some of the other reliable captains over the weekend, like your Bont or your Gawn, Sarong, didn't really perform. So thank goodness I got that one right. But the villain, taking a leaf out of your book a few times this season, the villain is me. People who know me would know I like to carefully weigh up all sides of a decision, and that's resulted in some pretty smart calls, I think, so far this year, but it can also result in me massively overthinking what should be a simple decision. And last week we talked about on the show Matt Rowell, how he's turned into an absolute potato and had to go from my SuperCoach team, so I was set on that all week, but I just was agonising over, do I spend up and use all the cash in the bank and just go to a top liner like Jack Sinclair, who I love, or do I split it a little bit and get a cheaper guy like Connor Rosie in the midfield? I also looked at someone like a Jai Caldwell or a Colby McKercher even when I knew he was coming back, and then maybe leave enough money in the bank to get upgrade a forward as well, who would have probably been Isaac Rankin. But in the end, I decided Rosie was the smart play, and I made that trade on Friday night, and then I woke up Saturday morning and I was second-guessing myself, and I thought, oh, geez, I really like Sinclair. And then I thought, he's probably going to get tagged this week. Rankin, who I was also going to bring in, had a tough matchup against Brisbane. You know what I could do? I could just do nothing. I could reverse my trades, sit on my hands, and just have one more week to think about this. Didn't think that would hurt me too much. You know, Rankin had a tough matchup. Sinclair might get traded. I'll keep Matty Rowell for one more week. He's playing North. Could bounce back. So these games, I think the North versus Gold Coast game and the Port Adelaide game both started at 1:45 on the Saturday afternoon, and it was about 1:55, I'd say, where I was the Ron Burgundy meme I immediately regret this decision. Connor Rozee absolutely going off his head. I think he had about 70 points at quarter time, nearly 20 disposals, absolutely brained the Bulldogs. Matt Rowell, on the other hand, just another horrible performance. 4 scores in a row, 80 or under. So, and the worst thing there is not only, I mean, I really don't recommend you, calculating how many points these things cost you, but it would have been well over 100 points. And then, because the other thing was I had plenty of money in the bank and I thought, well, if I wait a week, whatever happens, I can just sort of do these same moves next round. But Rowell's lost money. Rosee's gone up about 80 grand. So the one positive is I do have trades because I didn't use them. So I do have some options. But I think the lesson is, apart from me being an idiot, is just doing anything is better than doing nothing, which is what I did. So that one's going to haunt me for a while, I think.
Paralysis by analysis here, Al. That was absolutely brutal. I love that you're like, I did a you, James. I was an idiot. It's like, yes, that's exactly how I rolled through this entire SuperCoach year. Can I add an extra just like villain in here? You, Al.
Yes.
You've already said you. You went to the photo of the kid. He's whipped it out. He's gone, look, sometimes you make mistakes in SuperCoach, but it doesn't matter because these are the things that matter. And it's a picture of the kid. It's an amazing photo. It's very awesome. But you went there.
Check that out on my Twitter.
You went there. You had to go there on the Twitter. You're like, nah, I'm just going to throw I feel like you might have pulled the trigger on that one a bit early. Like, I could have done that in round 4. And away we go. But look, this is great. But I feel like you could have held that in the bag for like 1 more week. Maybe 2, just for when the real chips are down. I feel like I might have jumped the gun on posting the picture of the kid going, it doesn't matter because this is what matters, I reckon. I loved it though, so well played.
Well, it didn't really work in terms of you just get that pit in the stomach when you just think, oh no, I just feel absolutely sick. What have I done here? So I know there was some pretty poor scores out there and some carnage, which we'll get to in a second. I didn't have Tuke Miller. I did have Charlie Curnow. So there's people who copped it worse than me. So it's a lot worse than being ranked in the top 300 in SuperCoach. But yeah, when I've made a lot of good decisions this year, and luck is a big part of SuperCoach, and it's gone my way a lot of times. But this time it absolutely didn't. So you just have to cop the bad ones, I guess. But yeah.
You do.
Painful.
And I feel like a lot of people are going to cop it this week. Let's do some SuperCoach news. I feel like we should just like sub in some like, horror movies. Because the wash from this week, Al, Max Gawn was subbed out with his ankle. I had the C on him. Brutal. Still got to 100 because he's Max Gawn, and it was the MCG. It's like, I'm still going to... He could walk on there and he gets a ton.
I think he had about 97 when he was taken out of the game, and just... the game was over by then. The scaling, the SuperCoach gods we'll just add a couple to his score to get him to a nice even 100.
Love that. Took Miller with the wrist injury as well. Not great. Down there at the Marvel Stadium. Jerry McGovern. This was a brutal one because they're like, he's not on the plane home because he's got a rib lung injury. You're like, that's a long train ride home, I'll tell you what. Jeez. Just put him in the car, off you go. McGovern as well was like, always going to be a big injury risk no matter what, but this is like a rib lung injury is not like a soft tissue injury. Like this is, you've had a massive hit and it's just done something. Not great for your SuperCoach vibes. And of course the MRO with Isaac Heaney and Isaac Rankin as well. Al, carnage. It's a bit of carnage because these are all very, very relevant SuperCoach players. And of course, Zach Fisher missed this week with his foot injury too. Which prompted a lot of folks out there to sort of, go, what do I do? Do I pull the trigger and trade him out now while I still can, while he's got a bit of value? And you saw McKercher go absolutely off his head, sort of in the Zach Fisher role, so it's going to be fascinating to see what happens there. But talk us through this. What do we do? What are we going to do? Because the talking point out of this week is, how do we survive the carnage, Al?
Well, especially when, as we said, the trades are running low and we threw them away with abandon in the first half of the season and now it comes time when we really need them. And I think you mentioned going to last week that you had a boost. I mean, how good would it be to have a boost this week?
It felt pretty good, I'll tell you what.
But, just going through some of these names. I mean, I think Gawn will play this week. It was very precautionary. Obviously, Melbourne was miles in front. I mean, not ideal when you see him with a massive ice pack on his ankle. But hopefully he gets up this week. Fisher, we just have to wait and see. If he comes back, it'll be an interesting one because a lot of people, as you said, pulled the trigger early and traded him out. If you held him, that's a real bonus if he comes back in. But if he doesn't, then that's another player that, because feet, as we saw with McKercher, he missed about 7 or 8 weeks. So that's another worry that we'll just have to watch the injury reports from North Melbourne. Yeah, McGovern, That really came out of the blue a little bit. He's cops knocks every single week, and he had a thumb issue that was all taped up going into the game. Then he copped a clash of heads at one stage from Jake Melksham, played out the game, but then we hear afterwards that he was taken to hospital, spent the night, I think, in hospital, didn't fly home with the team, as you say. So we'll monitor that. They play on the late game on the Sunday, so maybe, as you say, that gives him time to drive back across the Nullarbor, but obviously not ideal. And then you've got the guys, I think Tuke Miller's out for maybe a month with a broken wrist, so I think that's a must trade. McGovern could be as well. And then you've got, the MRO. We'll find out about that later today. But the talk is that Heaney maybe cops a week. I think certainly in that case you want to hold him and keep him on the bench. But Rankin could be more long-term. I think John Ralph's writing 3 or 4 weeks if that gets assessed as intentional. So if that happens, I think if it's 3 or 4 weeks, him, Miller, maybe McGovern are guys you're probably looking to try and trade if you can. But it all comes down to what cover you've got on the bench. People who have a spare premium sitting there, you're in pretty good shape. But otherwise, we're going to be calling on guys like a Billy Dowling or even a Nathan Kruger to come on and try and cover us for a week or two. Yeah,
Ralphie has listed it as a most likely could be 4 weeks for Rankin, which is pretty crazy after he concussed Starcevic at the start of that game. Pretty crazy, right? You've got just... there are teams out there that'd be looking and go, wait, I have all of those guys. Every single one. Like, what do you do at this point? It's like, well, there's my season done, I guess. Like, it's a horrifying feeling, right? So I think, how do we get out of this? Like, if we've got trades left, I know that the cupboard's getting very, very bare for a lot of coaches out there as well. I believe I've only got the 2 left after my using the boost last week to basically go full primo. And I actually did the switch from Fisher to Caldwell because I'm like, I prefer Caldwell at this point. I just don't like the sort of up and down of Zach Fisher. Worked this week because Caldwell was fantastic. Outside of that, who else are we looking at trading in, Al? Because obviously Caldwell's one of them, still only priced at 544 with the, break even looking pretty tasty as well, right? I think this week he is at 52. So there's still money to be made, but at this point, money's not really even the point. It's about the actual scoring and what your sort of upside is. And I feel like Caldwell's role has really, really gotten very, very, very reliable as the season's sort of gotten on. Outside of that, Connor Rozee. You mentioned him just before, 495. My beloved C. Rozee rips off the 168. What do we reckon about Connor Rozee, Al?
Yeah, there's a bit of a theme here, unfortunately. There's some guys there that are, you look at their prices and think, well, that's pretty good for what they can do, but they're all a lot more expensive than they were last week. So I think he did a great move there in getting Caldwell in, and that's a move now. You don't have to make that this week. You can look at, fixing some other issues potentially, but Caldwell's definitely a guy I would consider. 544K, he went up about 40 grand on the weekend. Now, Rozee went up 60 grand, but still 495K is a good price given what obviously we saw he can do. And I mean, the just really frustrating thing is last week I could have traded Rao to Rozee and made like 50 grand on the deal. This week, it's actually going to cost me money. He's about 20 grand more expensive, but that's still certainly an option to consider. Colby McKercher was just fantastic. 37 disposals in his first game back, had 11 kick-ins. So obviously without Fisher there, it probably helps him, but I think we've seen earlier in the year they can both score well in the same team in that role for North Melbourne. So at 444K, he's gone up 64 grand as well, but I think he's a viable option as a DPP. I guess the issue might be if you're running low on trades, it is a little bit risky given he has been managed with that foot issue, and if it flares up again during the week, you could easily see North resting him, or I thought they might even sub him out in his first game back or something like that. So, but we know he can score points. A couple of others that I thought on the weekend looked all right. Tom Stewart's 491K. We talked to Nat last week, and he brought him in a few weeks ago when he was closer to 400. Talking about fallen primos, he's an absolute classic. He's playing in the midfield now, it seems like full-time for the Cats. Scored pretty well on the weekend. Not massive numbers, but at that price, someone you can rely on. That's pretty good in defence. And if you're going really cheap, Sean Manor, it was a pretty crazy story from the weekend. Did you?
My beloved Sean Manor from heaven. It is absolute manna from heaven. The 118 that he ripped off on the weekend when he's been sitting on my bench quite literally all season, Al.
Yes.
And it was great. Did I have the emergency on him? No. So I couldn't actually loop it on field because, again, I'm an idiot. I actually went with Lawson Humphreys instead. He still ripped off 66. That outscored Clayton Oliver. Didn't use it though, of course. So anyway, that's one to keep in the back of the old noggin though, Manor. He'll stay with the E from here on out, I reckon.
Yeah, but I mean, he's 179K now. Again, big price rise, but that's still pretty cheap. And if we think surely he'll stay in the Cats team now after that performance. 118 was a great score. Probably not going to get that every week, but you think he'd be safe for sort of 70 or 80 mature age guys. So, he's an option you could consider to maybe free up a bit of cash and, have him as your bench cover that, in the next week or two could be really handy. And then maybe have him on the bench as backup for the rest of the season. And another player in a similar vein, unfortunately, he's forward only, but Matthias Philippou was a bit of a totally left field name that I wouldn't have thought we'd be talking about in SuperCoach. He's had a pretty rough season, lost money, I think, in the first half of the year when he was really battling a bit, but he went back to the VFL, found some form, put up some good numbers there, came back, and he was fantastic against the Swans, had 12 disposals in a goal against Sydney, top of the ladder team, in the last quarter to help get the Saints over the line, which was in a fantastic game. So only 218K in the forward line. Could he be a bit of an emergency break glass sort of cheap option down there?
Well, I think his full name is Matthias Lenny Hayes, Joey Lee Montagna, Nick Rewalt, Philippou. That's how he played on the weekend. Like, it was absolutely fantastic. He was everywhere. I loved it. Is it going to continue? Or it feels like that's just way more. That feels like one of the riskiest sort of moves that you could sort of kick the tires on. Just because you think about the rest of the St Kilda run home. This feels like it could have been like that one great moment that they have. Do they use it as a springboard, just as a sort of wider general sense? It's going to be...
They do play a lot. I think maybe next week they're at Adelaide Oval and then all the rest of their games are at Marvel Stadium.
There you go. Not bad. A couple of other names you got on there as well. Cripps and Sinclair. Interesting. The Cripps one, he's on his way to a Brownlow, just saying. Fantastic last 3 weeks. Absolutely crushing it. Still only priced at $573. This is a nice POD here. I love a good pod Seadley, a big pod. I don't know if I trust it. That's the toughest part, right? Because you could just have that 1 or 2 down weeks and absolutely submarine the end of your season. But Sinclair, you're all well on board the Sinclair train here, Al.
Yeah, the only thing is he's now like 640K, so...
He's priced himself out.
He's probably gone, yeah.
Tough. He's gone. I know. All right, let's now go to our chat with SuperCoach with DR. DR is an absolute legend. Check this out. It's very fun, and it's happening right now. Hey, Al, just before we go to DR in this awesome chat, we've got some breaking news. Maximus Aurelius Gornicus is in a moon boot and is not going to play this week, Al. What does this mean for all things SuperCoach? Jeez!
Yeah, I don't have a heap of time to digest this one. I did think he was just precautionary, we said, and we thought he'd play this weekend, but Max Gawn, according to John Ralph, has just filed a story that he had scans, waiting to see how bad they are, but Max is on crutches, and he says he's probably not going to play this week against the Bombers. So get your ruck cover organised, and if it turns out to be something worse than a week or two, oh boy.
My big one here is Nathan Kruger. Being able to switch him with Livingston, the old DPP is just massive, massive, massive in this moment. Same thing goes for Luke Jackson. If you've got cover on your forward line as well, you've still got Jackson in the forward line perhaps. I can also just throw him up there. But otherwise, that's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's massive because I've got all these complicated DPPs set up, but I might need Jackson to cover the ruck and then Kruger to cover the forward line and Fisher to cover the back line. And, yeah, it's all getting very complicated.
Nice one. All right, now let's go to our chat with SuperCoach with DR, the legend himself, DR. All right, in a week where we are missing so many other people, Al, we put out the bat signal. The bat signal gets flashed into the sky, and who responds? But our very own legend. He is the mastermind behind the YouTube channel that I love, that Al loves, that we all love. SuperCoach with DR. It's DR. What's going on, DR? How was your week in SuperCoach? How are you going? What's happening?
Oh, boys, absolutely wrapped to be on here. Thank you very much for having me on. I was saying that you've probably got me on the right week here because had a pretty solid week, right on 2,500. So about 5 minutes before the final scaling, I was on 24.98, and I'm just going, fingers crossed, 2 more points, just get me to that nice round number. And the SuperCoach gods did look after me, scaled me up to 2,500. So, yeah, pretty solid week, boys, and going up the rankings nicely, which is good. So pretty happy, can't complain, fellas.
Nice one. Do you want to start with this week, Al, and just sort of wrap that up, or do you want to talk about DR's SuperCoach story? What do you reckon?
Well, I think we probably just need to touch on the craziness that happened this weekend. And I know last week I've sort of talked about how I had some trades, reversed them, it all blew up in my face, and I know you had some similar frustrations last week, but you must have fixed it all, which is inspiration for me. So can you just explain maybe what moves you made going into this round, and then I guess any quick thoughts on what do we do from here, especially if you've got the likes of Heaney, Rankin, we're still waiting on exactly how long these guys might be out for. And McGovern, there's a few landmines that have popped up at the wrong time this season.
Yeah, there certainly is. Look, I had a big decision on my hand last week. Do I actually trade or do I just leave those couple of trades in the bank? So going into last week, I had the 4 trades. Fisher was the only bloke I really needed to deal with. But at the end of the day, I tried to take the sensible approach or the cautious approach and actually just leave those 4 trades in the bank. And with what we've seen this week, guys, with all of the absolute carnage, I thought that's probably the move that I'm going to make. Just hold off on trades, and hopefully if there's carnage a little bit later on in the season, then that may give me a bit of an advantage, just having that extra trade up the sleeve, because as we saw, carnage everywhere, suspensions, injuries, and I think this is a week where that 23rd premium will really come into play. So if you're lucky enough to have a 23rd on your bench, then I think you'll be laughing. But it depends how many of these blokes have actually got. Like, I've got a mate who's got your McGovern, your Heaney, your Rankin, and I think there's one more there as well.
Miller, maybe he was another one.
I think, guys, we need to play it smart, and depends how much carnage you're actually dealing with. But for me, I think what we've really got to look to do now is not pay up for those really high price premiums. We've got to look for some value, some diamonds in the rough. Someone like a Sam de Koning down back, would it be worth taking a punt on him now that he's got that number 1 ruck role for the short term? These are the little things that we need to look at, any changes in role, and just focusing on value at the moment, because as we know, with limited trades, we can't be spending up on the big boys. So need to find some diamonds in the rough, boys.
I do love this, though, because all year we've just been spending like drunken sailors with the trades. It's just like absolute chaos. It's like me and the club just making it rain, just like, let's go, dollar bills everywhere. Unfortunately, this is where, you've got to pay the piper at some point, right? So I've got just a couple, I love the idea of let's take it a little bit easy and not actually trade this week. This is my entire approach last week, right? Did I do it? Of course not, because I don't listen to my own advice. Never forget, Al, I'm an idiot. This is how I roll. I'm just like, let's go 3. I used my last boost last week. It didn't work out.
But either way, a boost this week.
So look, if we could just get one more boost, it'd be pretty handy. But has there been a trade this year that you look back on now, DR, and just like, yes, that was the one that I nailed? You talk about diamonds in the rough, the pods. Was there one that you thought a little bit of left of centre and just went, nailed that one?
Look, it's not necessarily left of centre, but about a month ago, I bought my man Chocky Neal in. And apart from the 170, he has not let me down. Massive, massive ceiling game on the weekend. It was either going to be him, Dunkley, or Errol Goulden. So either way, I think we would have got a pretty decent player there. But the great thing about Chocky is the fact that I'm a Brisbane Lions man myself, and there's nothing worse than watching your own team run around and barracking against some of your own blokes, because you just don't want them scoring well because you know that you don't own them. So it was a bit of a match made in heaven, the fact I'm a Brisbane man, Chocky's on fire, and I can't complain with that one. But I tell you what, boys, looking back to my starting team, I had Grundy, Nick Martin, Fisher, trade them all out, and then they're all sitting back on my side again. So it's been one of those seasons where I may have wasted a trade or two, but certainly can't go past Chocky's one of the number 1 trade-ins, I think.
I love this. I want to petition to call this doing a Clements, because that's what I've done all year. I reckon if you go back to my round 0 team, I've got about half my team retraded back in. Because again, I'm an idiot. Look, this might be the problem, Al. I got given too many trades. I reckon if we could have some sort of option built into this where it's like, James, you've only got 13 trades. And I'm like, I better use these wisely. You give me 40. I'm just like, don't care. Let's go. I'll fix it later. Off we go. Nope. Give me 13. Just go, Jim, this is all you've got. I'm like, all right.
I think you need more of a discount system that if you're trading back in someone that you actually had at the start of the year, maybe that's only like half a trade.
Yeah, I like that. That's not bad. Nice one. Is there a person that you're like, all right, dodged a bullet there? Because I think some of the ones that we've looked at throughout this season, we've talked about bringing folks back in. My biggest one was my biggest decision, I guess, was Caleb Sarong in place of Bont. When Bont was quite literally at his lowest point of the season, I went, look, I can afford Sarong now. I'm going to go Sarong. I'll try to get Bont later. Didn't happen again. So that's sort of this isn't exactly, I took the bullet, the Sarong bullet. It sucks. He's been handy, but he's not been that great. Do you have somebody like that?
Well, probably the biggest player I avoided was Tragan Matty Rao. I was very, very close to paying top price for Rao, but there was something that just didn't quite feel right about it. And I tell you what, talk about falling off a cliff, boys. what has happened to this great man? He was absolutely on fire, looking like a top 4 midfield premium. That's what I had him pegged as anyway, but just a shell of himself, particularly what he was producing in the first half of the season. So that's probably the biggest one I've actually avoided. If I'd have paid up full price for Matt Rowell, the domino effect would have been pretty terrible, I think, and would have been faced with some more carnage. So that's probably the big one for me, avoiding paying up for Matty Rowell.
Yeah, I think that we'll probably get into this over the next few weeks, a bit more lessons, what we learned from the season, but that seems to be standing out, that you just had these guys who made absolutely incredible starts, like a Rowell or a Sarong or Tom Green, Jack Steele, and then people rush to jump on them because after 5 or 6 weeks you think, I can't go with this guy out of my team. He's just killing me how many points they're scoring. And we had a bit of money around because our rookies were going well and we had all these trades. So people were really paying up. But if you went back and did the maths on all of those guys since then, like it's almost impossible to maintain the level that they were at. And some of them have really dropped right off. And the lesson has been, as you touched on, that if you can, and we had Nat on last week who's still leading overall, that if you can find someone who's a bit discounted, that's probably the way to go rather than spending all your bank just because you think I've got to get a Tom Green or a Matt Rowell in my team.
Absolutely, and I think that's a bit of a lesson learnt in itself. You look at the price that LDU got to. If we had jumped on him at his lowest price, what a bargain that would have been. We've just seen Connor Rozee as well, even Jordan Dawson, when he went right down in price. If you jumped on him after that, he produced some really nice scores. So I think a big lesson learnt here is if we have a fallen premium, let's just jump on him. It's not worth paying up because we've seen such fluctuations in form with the Sarong types, with the Rowell types. So I think if we've got a premium that's undervalued, don't overthink it. Jump on because more likely than not, they're going to find form again. And if we can save 100 to 200K here and there, then come towards the end of the season, it's going to be really beneficial for us, I think.
Unless they're named Clayton Oliver.
That's right.
So your season, going into this year, so we've talked, we've had a couple of the brightest sparks in the SuperCoach universe on this show this year. And the best part has been sort of talking about them and their strategy going into the season. I think Nat was fascinating last week to at least sort of go, he actually targeted some mid prices that people weren't sort of looking at and sort of built his team around that way. What did you approach the season with DR? What were you sort of really prioritizing?
It's funny because this year with the 4 extra trades, I think regardless of whether or not you've been playing for 20 years, it's your first year, you've just been playing for a couple, we're almost all rookies in a way because there's no history, there's no data to suggest, well, this is the best way to use those extra 4 trades. So my plan at the start was to be pretty aggressive with those extra trades, and it was actually to my detriment. I did some stupid moves, like I boosted in Jesse Hogan because I thought, look, I can get a nice price rise from him, hopefully a nice ceiling score, and then we can look to trade him on, just some quick flips. So that was probably my strategy going into the year with these extra trades. Quick flips, not holding on to those rookies, not having to squeeze every last dollar out of them. You might be able to move them on a little bit quicker. Apart from that, a few mid prices thrown in. My structure is normally what I call the bitzer. So not necessarily full guns and rookies, not full mid-price madness, but a little bit of both, I suppose. That's why I call it the bitzer. A little bit from the guns and rookies, a little bit from the mid-price madness, and just trying to really focus on that value. Those blokes that have a bit of a change in role, like your Nick Martin coming out of the back line, I thought this could be a really nice opportunity if he's got the role. So really looking at changes in role and where that value is. But I did stuff up a lot, boys, with the extra trades. I got a little bit excited. So I think looking to next year, if the same rules apply, we've still got the same amount of trades, that I'll probably hold off on boosting early and being a little bit more sensible with them, I think. But yeah, as I mentioned, there's no data to suggest this is the best way to do it. So I think given the fact we've had this year with the 4 extra trades, looking into next year, we'll have a little bit of a better idea about how to use them effectively, I think.
I love that because I reckon that should be my nickname next year, Captain Sensible. I'm just going to go no trading. I'm just going to start off my thing. I'm just not going to try my hardest to resist the temptation, Al. I'm going to fail. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to completely cook it somehow, but that's my job. I'm here to cook it. So anyway, the rest of your story as well. Putting together your awesome videos week on week on week. How much time and effort are you putting into SuperCoach each week?
Probably a little bit too much, I think, mate. I'm a primary school teacher, so I work full time, and I've got my podcast I do each week with Jonathan Spills, the Swordplay podcast. I've got the stock market video where we look at all the break evens, best trade outs, best trade ins, and obviously the round review and a few other little guest appearances here and there. But there's some nights where I might be up till the late hours of the morning getting the stock market video done. But look, that's a commitment that I make to all the community, to all the audience. And I must admit that I absolutely love every second of it. And I'm a big fan of all the other YouTubers, all the other podcasters. Obviously listen to this podcast each week. You know, you got the Godfather, the Great Abs, George and the boys, the Insider boys. I know that Nath was basically talking about all of them last week. And I think some other great advice that he gave was to not just copy what other people are doing, use that to get a bit of a gauge about where the community is going, but then make your own decisions. And the more people that you listen to, the more informed they can be. But yeah, I'm a big fan, just like everyone else is, of all the wonderful podcasts, but probably spend a little bit too much time, to be honest, boys. But it's a passion. We all love it, don't we?
I love it as well. Like, you know, I've got a primary school aged kid, and I see his teachers, I'm like, you're doing the Lord's work. Because, oh, God, I can barely deal with one of them, let alone like a full classroom. And you're out here just pumping out all this awesome SuperCoach content and then having to deal with little kids. No, thanks. I've got a hard enough job dealing with like our lunatics on the AFL Today show half the time, right? It's just like, oh, God, here we go again, let alone small children. Anyway, Al.
Well, last year, actually at the start of the year, went out and saw Dr. Addy's work, and where he managed to work some SuperCoach into the school curriculum. So that's just ticking all the boxes. But I think you might have a new role this year. So is that something you can still make part of your actual job as well?
Yeah, I've actually swapped the books for the balls. So I'm in a PE role this year, which is nice, a bit of a nice change. So don't have my own little classroom, but we're still running the SuperCoach League at the new school as well. So I think we've got someone sitting about 2,000 in grade 6 there, which is a really good effort. So it looks like he'll be getting the ring this year. But I haven't been able to do as much in the PE role, but lots of keen super coaches there, mate. And just on the side, they may do a little bit of my research for me. I've got the little minions there in the classroom doing some research for me. So always a bit of an advantage there, I think, mate.
Surely you can do some, set up some drills of, what's an effective kick and a contested knock on and all that.
Hit out to advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of gear. Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. I'll just put them to work. That's what it's all about. All right, so you're ranked 602 at the moment. Like, what's the plan for the rest of the season? How do you try to rise up the ranks there?
Well, look, probably an aim for me, if I finish top 500, that'd be really, really nice from here. But the strategy, as I touched on before, was just to be a little bit more conservative, probably for the next 2 weeks. I wasn't comfortable with 7 rounds to go, only going down to 2 trades. I think if we get with about 5 rounds to go and I've got the 4 trades left, then I might use a couple of them to make a little bit of an upgrade or get maybe a 24th premium. But I think just for now, the sensible thing is to just survey the carnage and then keep those extra couple of trades in the bank, because we saw just this week so many people going down. Who's to say that next week we don't lose another couple of premiums? Touch wood that we don't. But that's probably going to be my strategy. And other people may disagree. Other people may say, if you're around 600 at the moment, just full send it. The more aggressive you are now, the better opportunity you've got to make a real dig into the ranks. But I'm taking the opposite approach at the moment and just having a look and surveying the carnage and maybe making to look a couple of moves after that, I think, mate.
And surely a key from here, which unfortunately, just looking at a couple now, I think we're all priced out of them if you don't have them already, but getting on the lines now seems to be a key to rising up the ranks, because they're absolutely flying, especially when they play at the Gabba. Guys like Dunkley and Neil and Zorko was a little bit quieter on the weekend, but they can just put up these massive numbers. And looking at the fixture on the weekend, I'm very nervous not having Lockie in my team, because you got the Eagles this weekend, so surely he's a candidate for the captaincy again. There's 350 odd points in the bank.
You'd hope so, mate. You'd hope so. But it's funny, when we look at matchups, we look back to last week, the Bulldogs, they're meant to be the hardest matchup for inside mids, and you saw what Rosie did and what Butters did. So you just don't know sometimes. Then we look to the Richmond matchup, and poor old Caleb Sarong, what on earth happened there, boys? Jack Graham all of a sudden has just come from the clouds and tagged my vice captain. Sometimes you just can't tell. So you can use the data and think, well, this is the most likely scenario, but it just doesn't work out like that all the time, guys. So it's good to look at things like matchups, but they're not the be-all and end-all at the end of the day.
It's a good shout. I mean, is there one other person, like, so with the trades in the bank, is there like one other person, if you do have to make an upgrade, if you do get 2 more rounds into the future and you're like, yeah, all right, this is the last target I've got, is there one that's sort of standing out to you?
Yeah, it's Jai Caldwell. Jai Caldwell, I was on him. I've probably been on him for the last couple of weeks and very close to trading him in for the last 2. But I think with Caldwell, he's got the role. And the best thing is the DPP status. If we're looking for that 23rd, 24th type man, you have to get someone with DPP status that can cover multiple lines. And I know that that's what maybe put a few people off getting Rosie in, is that 23rd man, because you can only obviously cover your midfield. But I think if you've got some DPP around, that's going to be a massive advantage. I know for myself, I've got, for example, Fisher up forward, then you got Will Dawson down back, so you can make that link. We've got your Sard from Essendon as that DPP in your midfield that can switch between your back. And then I've got Dogger Jackson in my forward line, which can also cover the ruck. So I think that's super, super important. Even if we're looking to get those DPP loopholes and on-playing loopholes, get people with DPP so that you can actually cover multiple lines. I think that's super, super important towards the end of the season.
Nice one. All right, Al, anything else?
No, I think we've covered it all off. I mean, I don't think we actually ever asked when you started playing SuperCoach and how you got into it. And obviously, as you say, it's a massive passion of yours. Is there an interesting backstory to all that?
Look, I've always loved my footy, and I'm pretty sure I've been playing since the first year, to be quite honest. You know, at the start, you don't really know a lot about the game. You just pick your favourite players. I think most of my team was Brisbane. Back when Jonathan Brown was playing, that's when I started playing SuperCoach. But to be honest, guys, the best thing I've found about SuperCoach is a community and the friendships that you make. You know, the podcast I'm doing at the moment with Jonathan Spills, I didn't know those 2 blokes from Bar of Soap probably 3 years ago, but getting to know them, getting to know other people in the community, that's been the best thing for me. And I can now call some of my best mates people that I've actually met playing the game. It's just, I love everything about it. I started off on a website, supercoachtalk.com. So that was probably my first community. Had a couple of decent finishes, finished 33rd, 77th, and a couple of other top 100 finishes. And after that, I got encouraged by a few blokes on the website, you know, maybe put some content out, share some of your knowledge. And I was that nervous the first time I did it. I thought, look, if I can get 10 viewers, and that's a bit of a win. But lo and behold, sort of year upon year, built the audience up, and we're almost at 6,000 subscribers now, and got some members of the channel as well. So couldn't be more thankful for the community that we're involved with. And I know lots of people thank the content creators for what they do, but I really got to thank the community for all the support that they give myself and the other content creators. And we've got to remember that content would be nothing without the audience. So, yeah, very, very thankful for the wonderful community that we've got.
Look at that. Couldn't have said it better myself, I'll tell you that much. All right, it is SuperCoach with DR. Go check out his amazing YouTube channel. Thanks for jumping on with us, Legend. This has been awesome.
Appreciate it, guys. And again, thank you very much for all the wonderful work that you've been doing. One of my favourite poddies to tune into each week. Great banter, great info, and yeah, can't thank you boys enough for everything you're doing for the community.
Oh, thank you, mate. One of the great blokes of SuperCoach.
All right, how good was that chat with DRL? That was fun as, wasn't it?
Yeah, just an absolute great bloke, great man of the SuperCoach community.
A gentleman among gentlemen. Right, Phantom's on leave. He's gone full Jordan De Goey. He's off in Bali or something. I don't know. You never go full Jordan De Goey.
We did score 2,600 on the weekend, so yeah, no time for us.
Celebration, not bad. So let's talk some Bubble Boys really quickly without Phantom here. Lawson Humphries is the big one, obviously, for Geelong. At 117K, defensive mid. What an awesome combo that is, Al. Like, I love it at the moment. I brought him in last week as like off the back of the first round as long as he was named. He came in, scored a very, very handy, like, it feels like his basement, just because he's one of the many, many Geelong players with long blonde hair. It's like, I feel like we're just giving them points. And it's like, all right, he's got 66 on the weekend. You're feeling pretty good. His break even is minus 89. I love having him on my team already. It's not going to really matter, but at least he's scoring points. This is good.
It's nice to see. And then, yeah, if he gets a nice big price bump next week, who knows? You might be able to use that cash somewhere. But, yeah, I mean, as Phantom's been saying the last couple of weeks, we're not really looking to bring in rookies to make money at this stage of the season. But if you do need to downgrade to free up some money to trade maybe a Touk Miller or somebody like that, then you're looking at the cheapies who's around. And yeah, Humphries, as you say, a lot of people brought him in last week. I think he's still the standout because of that DPP link. The other one, if you need a little bit of extra cash, but unfortunately it's defence only, but Jacob Blight at the Tigers, 102k. They've given him some important roles the last couple of weeks, and he has had a few goals kicked on him, but he's taken a few intercept marks and done some nice things as well. Scored 86 against the Dockers, so a nice big break even for him as well, -77. So I think he'll keep playing and maybe provide some backup bench cover there in the back line if you need it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where having those DPPs becomes really important, right? So if you do need to trade just to get another body there, if they're making money, whatever, if they're scoring points, happy days. But if you can actually just use them to bring in somebody else and have that bench coverage, you're laughing right at this point. Like, that's all you kind of need at this point into the season, I think.
And you do have, the DPP is the most important thing. And I think DR mentioned there is the option, and Phantom's talked about this too, about this late in the year, you can bring in someone who's not even going to play. There's Lockie Rawlinson from West Coast is a mid-forward, 102,000. I've seen a few people trading him in and just being able to swing guys around to cover. But I think if there's someone who's playing, that is still the way to go, because like a week like this, you might need them. And, my defensive cover at the moment is having, Will Dawson from North Melbourne up there on the bench who's not playing, and I've got Zach Fisher in the forward line, and I think, if I get someone out like McGovern, I can swing Fisher back. But then what happens if Fisher's out as well, and I need someone to cover him? So, I think getting someone who's actually playing is still not a bad move if you can do it.
Nice. All right, so for everybody's favourite segment, though, it's Al with Stats with Al. Al, take it away with Stats with Al.
The last DPP additions of the year came into effect after lockout on Sunday night. So we've got 12 new players with DPP. Nobody who's going to break SuperCoach, I don't think. We didn't get Isaac Rankin as a mid-forward or Bontempelli or someone like we've had in previous years. But a few interesting little names in there. Zach Williams is now a defender forward. Lockie Sullivan is a mid-forward. If you've still got him, we talked about the importance of DPP, so he could be handy on the bench. Darcy Tucker is a def mid, and one who came from the clouds a little bit was Mason Wood, who's a forward mid. So maybe in SuperCoach draft, these guys could be players you could look at. Other stats from the weekend that caught my eye, we mentioned Colby McKercher. North Melbourne had 11 behind kick-ins at the weekend. He took all 11. Absolute hog down there, which we know adds to your points as a defender. So it'd be interesting if Fisher comes back, whether he maintains that, but that certainly helped him post that big total on the weekend. And looking at the kick-in numbers, we talked about Jack Sinclair and how he's sailed away in terms of price, but his role did change a little bit on the weekend. He's been in the back line, taking all the kick-ins for the Saints in the game against the Swans, and they probably that all seemed to work for them. He was back in the midfield. So from 2 centre bounces the week before, he had 21 yesterday and only the 3 kick-ins. So still scored okay, but that probably limits him a little bit in terms of those massive ceiling scores. And at that price, you're probably passing on him now.
So you're saying it puts a roof on his ceiling?
Correct.
Nice. All right, quickfire round. New tagger alert, Al. Talk us through it.
We mentioned this earlier. Richmond hasn't tagged in I don't know how many years. A lot of people thought Caleb Sarong was absolutely safe as house as captain. I think he might be one of them. And what do you know, Jack Graham given a run with role. I actually don't know why Richmond hasn't used him more in this role. I think he did it against Rory Sloane in the 2017 grand final. Worked pretty well. I guess you need to find the right matchup, and Sarong was that guy. So that's a kick in the pants, and something we'll have to watch in Richmond's fixture in remaining games.
Just need more taggers.
Exactly.
Here we go. Charlie Curnow or Luke Jackson on field, Al?
So this is, given the carnage, we might be just having to play everyone who's playing on field this week, but I think a lot of people facing these kind of questions when you might have an extra primo or rookies that, who do we decide to play versus who sits on the bench? And these are always hard calls, but I think given the way Curnow has been going, you definitely back Luke Jackson, especially given Sean Darcy is going to miss a week with concussion. So totally different equation when Jackson's playing as a solo ruck. So he's got Lloyd Meek and the Hawks, which is not the easiest matchup, but if he's on the weekend, he didn't even get that many hitouts, I don't think, but when he's in the middle of the ground, just gives him heaps of opportunities to win some hard balls and clearances and those kind of things, and he scores really well. So I'd definitely be playing him over Charlie this week.
Nice one. My favourite one here is you've got written down Sean Manor or Jai Simpkin. This is great. Every North fan is like, come on, man. Jai Simpkin rips off 110 last week against the Gold Coast Suns at Marvel. My beloved Sean Manor from heaven, 118. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Who do you like there?
I like Sean just because Collingwood's, I think I'm going to do some stats deep dives. Keep an eye out for this in the next little while about who's giving up the most points in different positions. And midfielders against Collingwood scoring a heap of points. So Mana's not necessarily a pure mid, but yeah, Collingwood's been a great matchup. They don't tag and they don't seem to pay much attention to a guy like a Zach Merritt or a Jai Caldwell or even a Nick Martin. So I think he'll go all right, whereas Simpkin has the Swans at the SCG, which is a pretty tough outing.
That's a good call. Billy Dowling or my beloved Bruce Reveal?
Based on Brucey's score on the weekend, you're probably back in Billy. He's been just slowly improving week by week. He's got the Saints this week. Bruce has West Coast out. I think he might like the expanses of Optus Stadium over there.
Just more space for his hair. It's great.
Really let it run free. But I think probably back in Billy. I think a few people will be playing in this week.
Bruce has been really, really good as well up until literally this week against Adelaide. So a bit of a tough one. Outside of that, this is the tough one for me. Because who's the biggest worry? And it's just like, let's just start listing dudes on James's team. Clayton Oliver ripped off the 51 this week. That was just egregious. Felt personal.
In a massive win against the Eagles too. Yeah,
go figure.
Not sure what happened there.
Nat Fyfe, 39. Charlie Curnow, 33. Barely sniffed the ball on the weekend. Matt Rowell, 79. Just does not like that Marvel grass. And Jordan Dawson, 5-round average of 81. He has still some of these half decent ones, and then just will throw out nothing like he did this week with 60. So who's the biggest worry there, Al?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk about Matt Rowell anymore. Curnow, that was bringing him in a couple of weeks ago. Looked like a great move when he kicked 5 against the Cats, but it's been pretty ugly since then. I think if you've got guys like Clary and Fyfe, I mean, they're really just bench cover, and as we've talked about, probably going to need them now, but I don't know if they're worth much to trade unless you think I could trade an Oliver down to a Sean Manor or a Philippou and bank a couple $100,000 and do something with that. But Dawson, I'd probably back him in. He just seems to cop, whether it's a tag or he's got a niggle, something happening each week. So we know he can turn it on when it all goes well for him. So, but those numbers are pretty painful if you're a Jordan Dawson owner.
They've got a tough one as well this week against St Kilda. Without possibly Rankin there as well to help him out. That could be a big worry, but just Curnow at the moment, just the sheer lack of explosiveness in that forward line from him was really, really worrying. They go up against the Western Bulldogs, who didn't have Liam Jones last week, but possibly could be back.
Rory Lobb's playing fullback now.
Exactly.
But you're right. Curnow I thought was pretty incredible against Richmond the week before that Ben Miller had him totally covered for the whole game, and then Jack Buckley on the weekend just didn't get 1 centimetre away from him, it seemed, for the whole match. So
it's tough.
Hopefully you can turn that around. But it's rough.
Nice one. All right, let's do some captain's calls. Vice captain, captain. Looking at this one for me, look, it didn't work at all this week for me. I had Dacos rips off 92 as the VC. Gawn I had as the captain against West Coast. He had the 100. Sarong was my other big one, I think, last Monday. He had 84. So, yeah, great assault with all these apparently. Jeez. Dacos up against the Cats on Friday night again. Kind of handy. I always love my Friday night VCs. Just get the quick look in. Outside of that, you've got Tassie, Freo versus the Hawks. There is a great, though, matchup on Saturday early as well with Sydney taking on North Melbourne, which we'll talk about again in a second. I don't mind a quick look at Errol Gould. Love a bit of whoa, Errol. Let's go.
Eric.
And we'll see what happens. At the moment, that's sort of where I'm landing because with the big question marks around Gawn, I just don't know about that.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Al, would you say I'm crazy if I went the one man who has not scored under a ton all season? At home, because we know the Gold Coast are pretty good, above their 28th parallel. That's the AFL Today corollary. 28th parallel, Gold Coast good above it, bad below it. Simple as that. Flanders is the same. Up against Port at People's First. What do we think?
Yeah, no, I don't mind that. I mean, he plays late in the round, so he's a good backup captain. And given, as you say, some of the scores that we've been getting from our supposedly reliable captains, having someone who you can pretty much bank 110 plus every week and hopefully a bit more than that, it's not the worst shout at all because it's another tricky weekend. I mean, I think Zach Merritt against Melbourne's midfield should go all right again, so he could be one I'll definitely look at. The Bont didn't go as well on the weekend. I mean, still manages to find a way to get to 106, but played a lot of time in the forward line. Bevo back to his old tricks, but hopefully that was just with the Norton injury early. So Carlton midfield, though, not the easiest matchup. Yeah, it's a tricky weekend. I mean, I think one thing we mentioned about Dawson, I wouldn't be thinking about him as captain, but Marcus Windhager got injured. So that's one less tagger that we probably have to work on, worry about, I should say. And, I mean, it's the last game of the round. I did fleetingly think of Tom Green against Richmond, given the Tigers are not travelling all that well, but it probably feels like a bit of a nice Jack Graham type matchup.
It really does, actually, and that's got me worried. Tom Green at 96 last week. Obviously, Brisbane as well, I think, between Zorko, Dunkley, and Neil.
If you've got Lockie Neal or Josh Dunkley, unfortunately, I don't have either of those guys. Yeah, I'd be happily whacking the sea on them against the Eagles.
Nice one. All right, head-to-head. I scraped out the win this week in the head-to-head somehow, Al. We had Luke Ryan versus Max Gawn. There was 1 point difference. I managed to sneak that out somehow. Very nice.
Both of them, I think, a fair way under what we thought they might do.
Exactly. So I think this week we're going to go head-to-head. We're looking at this Sydney North game. So down back, Sheasel, he has been absolutely fantastic the last few games. Up front, Isaac Heaney. Heaney might miss this week. So if he misses out, I'm going to go Chad Warner. I think he takes that role, goes a little bit more midfield. Are you happy to go Sheasel against Warner?
Yes, I think I will. Yeah, the SCG probably makes it a little bit tougher for him, but yeah, geez, he's absolutely flying. Just the points on offer in that North Melbourne midfield in LDU's going pretty well as well, and then you throw in your Fisher and McKercher types. So they like even Simpkin. They like scoring points. Yeah, that's gonna be a great game for SuperCoach. Even you've got Grundy versus Cherry in the ruck. So Grundy back at his beloved SCG, but Cherry's having a great season as well. So that's not going to be an easy one for Brody, and then guys like Goulden as well. So. Plenty of points up for grabs up at the SCG. But, I think I like Shees he could nearly catch Luke Ryan. I have to check what the total points is because Ryan's just not quite the guy. We mentioned about some of the guys who got up to absolute flyers and you just thought we have to pay $700,000, whatever it is, to get him into our teams. But he hasn't been the same Luke Ryan in the last month or so.
So it's 1,946 total points for Luke Ryan. Sheasel is 1,877. So he is what? 50, 60, 70 odd around behind him. That's awesome.
That's gettable.
He could do it. Number one defender, Harry Sheasel. Love that. All right, finally, Monday moves. Are you making any moves this week, Al?
In stark contrast to last week, yes, I will make some moves. I'll make a move. I have lots of trades, but I don't really know what it's going to be. I guess we really just have to wait on the diagnosis for guys like, I've got McGovern in the back line, so if he's out for how long, I don't really have defensive cover, especially if Zach Fisher's not back. So we'll definitely have to look at that. I've got Matt Rowell still sitting there spudding it up, so I'd really like to get rid of him. Unfortunately, he's worth even less than he was last week. So there'll be some combination of all these guys, but Connor Rosie might feature. I just have to swallow my pride and pay a whole lot more than I would have last week for Rowell to Rosie. I can still afford that, and then see what happens maybe with some of these other primos and Heaney. If he's 1 week, you'd hope he could cover that off the bench, but that would probably have to be a Billy Dowling type. So a few issues to deal with, but I'll be trading someone, and I think Matt Rowell we can definitely say will be out of my team next week.
I love this. Just watch him go bang.
Back at people's first, so could happen.
I made my trades last week, so I'm going to stick fat until I have a trade forced upon me. Heaney, I can cover him with my beloved Sean Manor. I'm just swinging Manor forward. Let's go. Go out and kick 6 this week against the Pies. It'd be good to see, I'll tell you what. But that's it for this week, isn't it, Al? I think.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It's been a big show.
You start thinking at this point in the year, even on Saturday, I was thinking, what are we going to talk about this week in SuperCoach? And, well,
we've got round 18 coming up. Absolute chaos there, isn't it? But remember to subscribe to SuperCoach Plus to take your game to the next level. Of course, you can follow all things Code Sports for all the insights that Al and others provide, all the news and analyses. And if you haven't already, why haven't you? What are you doing? If you haven't already, rated, reviewed this show on Apple, Spotify, or subscribed to us on the old YouTube via Code Sports, get around it. You're killing me. You can also check out the AFL Today show. We had a massive Sunday night show as well, just Alex and I. First time this season that the Roos had won. And the Swans and Blues and lost. Absolutely shocking gear, I'll tell you. Anyway, thanks, Al, for jumping on once more.
Thank you, James. And you just quickly, you touched on SuperCoach Plus there. Some great tools there. If you think, I can't trade, I'm out of trades, or I don't want to trade, there's still, the optimize button is just a really simple way to get the highest projected scores, best combination on your field. And it does even move players around DPPs and things to get the best score. And when you're looking at captains and matchups. Who do I start out of these rookies? There's some amazing tools in there with all your matchup data, which teams concede the most points, career stats at certain venues, all those things. So there's heaps you can do to still make sure you get the best score each week.
It's basically magic. You press and go, that was magic. What are we doing? And a massive thanks to DR for jumping on as well. It was a really great chat with him. All right, I've been Jaymz Clements. Happy super coaching.